Today we are going to understand about the psychological model. Okay, so we know that there are two models for abnormal behavior in DSM-I, that is biological model and psychological model. So what does psychological model studies? So it studies the reasons for abnormal behavior like personality factors, traumatic experiences and the childhood experiences. So in psychological model, we generally study the personality, the traumatic experience and the childhood experience of an individual, which are the reasons for the abnormal behavior. Okay. So to understand this, there are different models given in psychological model, that is psychoanalytical model, behavioral model, cognitive model, humanistic model and interpersonal model. In this chapter, we are going to understand about these three, that is psychoanalytical, behavioral and cognitive. So as per your exam perspective, you have to write about three models in psychological model, that is psychoanalytical, behavioral and cognitive. Okay. So today we are going to see the psychoanalytical model. So this psychoanalytical model is based on the ideologies of Dr. Segmund Freud. So Dr. Segmund Freud gave this psychoanalytical model, and in which he included four subparts. The first one is conscious and unconscious mind. So Freud said that if there would be conflict between conscious, unconscious and subconscious mind, then it will lead towards abnormality. So if there will be a conflict between conscious, unconscious, subconscious mind, then abnormal behavior can be seen. So the conscious mind includes the events and experience for which the individual is aware. So if an event or experience is happening and if the individual is aware about that, then it comes into conscious mind. Okay. Then in subconscious mind, the individual is not aware about the experiences, but if he tries to remember it, he can remember that event. For example, while going home, you just take the turn according to your way. You does not have to consciously remember which turn you will take the next. But after reaching home, if you think about which turn you took, then you will be able to remember that, and this happens because of subconscious mind. While in unconscious mind, the experiences or events are not remembered by the individual. Okay, so all the repressed feelings, emotions, then bad experience, all are included in unconscious mind. The individual is not aware about the feelings stored in the unconscious mind. The feelings can be repressed, the emotions can be repressed, or the bad experience can be there, but the individual is not aware about those feelings that are stored in his unconscious mind. Okay. And over here, the Freud has given the explanation of conscious and unconscious mind based on the iceberg. As in the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is very narrow. Like in the iceberg, the 20%, around 20% of ice floats above the water, and about 80% is inside the water. So according to Freud, the portion that floats above the water is related to conscious mind, and the portion that is inside the water is as same as unconscious mind. Okay. So the unconscious material continuously seek expression in some or other way. Now this unconscious material, the unconscious mind, will seek expression in some other way. It will come out in some other way, like in the form of fantasies, in the form of dreams, or in the form of slip of tongue, or through abnormal behavior like nail biting, involuntary movement of leg and doing the same activity again and again, or sometimes in the form of disease. So we have a lot in our unconscious mind, and it comes out in the form of fantasies, dreams, then slip of tongue, or abnormal behavior like nail biting or movement of legs or any other sort of activity, and also it can result into some form of disease. For example, one form of disease would be multiple personality disorder. So this multiple personality disorder was shown in the movie Aparichit. So if you have seen that movie, you will come to know how that person was not able to remember what he did when he was in his unconscious mind. Okay. Then the second subtopic that is included in the psychoanalytical model, that is defined by the Sigmund Freud, is ID, ego and superego. Okay. So Freud said that a person's behavior results from the interaction of three key components of the personality, that is ID, ego and superego. So according to Freud, person's behavior is based on the interaction of these three, that is ID, ego and superego. Okay. Now let us understand it one by one. So ID is the source of our instincts. So ID have generally two drives, that is life instincts and the death instinct. Now life instinct is considered as the constructive instinct, while the death instinct is considered as the destructive instinct. Okay. So what happens is, for life instinct, the primary drive is the sexual nature. In the life instinct is a constructive drive primarily of sexual nature, which constitutes the libido and the erodes the basic energy of the life. So we know that the constructive thing, that is the reproduction, is the basic energy of the life, without which the life on the earth will extinct. So life instinct is a constructive drive and primarily it is of sexual nature. Okay. Then the other one is death instinct. So death instinct is the destructive drive, and because of this death instinct, the individual tend towards aggression, destruction, etc. And this death instinct is of in two directions, that is external or internal. So if that instinct is externally directed, the behavior like biting, quarreling, murder, harm to others, etc. occurs. And if that instinct is internally directed, then the person will harm himself by nail biting, peeling the skin from the finger, or even the suicide also happen because of the internally directed death instinct. Okay. So that instinct is destructive drive and it leads to aggression or destruction, and they are of two types, that is internally directed or externally directed. In internally directed, the person himself harms himself either by biting the nail or peeling the skin or even the suicide. And if it is externally directed, then he will harm others or even he will commit a murder. Okay. So this was the ID. Then comes the ego. So ego is based on reality principle. So in layman time, we can say that ego is our conscious mind. Okay, that conscious thing is our ego. So after the first few months of life, a second part of the personality as viewed by Freud develops, the ego. So after a few months of the birth, the second part that develops the personality is the ego. So ego acts as a controller and is associated with conscious mind. So ego is the controller part of our mind and it is associated with our conscious mind. So ego tries to satisfy an individual's instinctual need in accordance with the reality. So what happens in ego is, because of ego, the individual tries to satisfy his needs based on the reality. So ego is related to conscious mind as well as it is related or it is accordance with the reality. Okay. Then comes the superego. The third one is the superego. So superego is associated with idealism or morality. So generally what is accepted in the society, the traditions or the customs and the beliefs, the difference between right and wrong, proper and improper, or the basis of morality, etc. are all included in the superego. So the person whose superego is properly developed, internal control system develops and the moral values become strong. So if the superego of a person has developed properly, then we can see that the internal control system also develop and that individual have strong moral values. Okay. And so if the intermental conflict arises because of these three subsystems, then the abnormal behavior can be observed. Okay. And why this conflict arises? Because all the three subcomponents have different goals. For example, in superego, we know that we behave generally based on the morality or idealism. But if we do not behave so, then we have conflict with our superego. So in a way, if these three subsystems have conflicts, then it will result into abnormal behavior. Okay. Then the third one is psychosexual stages of development. So Freud gave 5 psychosexual stages of development. You must have studied about this psychosexual stages in 11th standard also. So let us move on to the first stage, that is oral stage. So this stage starts from the birth till 2 years. So from the birth till the child attain 2 years of age, this stage goes on. And during this 2 years of life, the mouth is the principal erogenous zone. So because of the mouth, the infant feels the greatest pleasure through sucking and keeping things in the mouth. So you must have seen that child feels pleasure by sucking and putting things in the mouth during this stage. Okay. Then comes the anal stage. This stage starts from the 2 to 3 years. So at the start of 2 years, the stage anal stage starts and it ends at the 3 years. And during this time period, the anus is the major source of pleasure. Okay, and thus the child for the first time experiences the feeling of control, and he gets a major pleasure through the stimulation of the anus. Okay, then comes the phallic stage. This stage starts from the age of 3 to 6. So from 3 to 6 years the phallic stage is going on, and in this stage the self manipulation of genitals provide the major source of pleasure. So child generally explores his genitals during this stage, and also two types of complex are seen during this stage, that is Oedipus complex and the Electra complex. Now what happens in Oedipus complex is that the male child is attracted towards his mother, and in Electra complex the girl child is attracted towards the father. Okay, so all this happens in the phallic stage. Then comes the latency stage. The latency stage continues from 6 to 12 years. Now what happens in this stage is the sexual motivation decreases because the child is occupied in developing new skills and abilities. So during 6 to 12 years of age, the child is occupied in developing new skills and abilities, and so the sexual motivation decreases. And then comes the genital stage. This stage starts from 13 years of age, and at this stage the deepest feeling of pleasure comes from having sexual relation with the members of opposite sex. Okay, so Freud believed that appropriate gratification during each stage is important. Appropriate gratification during each stage is important. If a person is fixed at any level, it leads to abnormal behavior. So according to Freud, the gratification at each stage is very important, because if that person is not gratified, then he would be fixed at a particular stage and it would cause to abnormal behavior. For example, if a person is stuck at oral stage, then he would be prone to smoking, alcohol or eating disorder, because we know that at oral stage the greatest pleasure comes from the sucking or keeping things in the mouth. So if that person is stuck in the oral stage, then that individual would be prone to smoking, alcohol, eating disorders. Okay, let's see the other forms if we are stuck at the other stages. So over here you can see the example of psychological fixations. So if a person is fixed at oral stage, then it will lead to smoking, gum chewing or nail biting kind of behavior, and even the eating disorders in that individual. And if the person is fixed at anal stage, then it will lead to orderliness, obsessiveness and the rigidity. While a person is fixed at phallic stage, then it will lead to vanity, exhibitionism and the pride. Okay, this all can be seen if individual is stuck at the various stages. Okay. Then the last subtopic in psychoanalytical model is anxiety and defense mechanism. So in this model, Freud said that anxiety is at the center. So he took anxiety at the center of the study for the abnormal behavior, and he mentioned three types of anxiety, that is realistic anxiety, neurotic anxiety and the moral anxiety. So let us understand it one by one. So in realistic anxiety, what happens is it is associated with the challenges from the outer environment. It is also known as objective anxiety. So if you have anxiety because of the external environment, then it comes into realistic anxiety, and it is also known as objective anxiety. Okay. Then the second one is neurotic anxiety. In this anxiety, mental conflicts and insecurities are responsible, which are extreme in nature. A person having neurotic anxiety is unaware about the causes responsible for the anxiety. So this neurotic anxiety happens because of the mental conflicts and the insecurities which a person experiences, and they are extreme in nature. But the person is not aware about the reasons or the causes responsible for the anxiety. Though he is feeling anxiety, but he does not know that he is facing a mental conflict or insecurity due to which the anxiety is experienced. Okay. Then comes the moral anxiety. Moral anxiety, which is developed when a person is doing activity which hurts the super ego, known as moral anxiety. Okay. So if a person is doing something which is against the super ego or which hurts his super ego, then it is known then the anxiety that a person feels is moral anxiety. We know that superego is associated with morality and idealism. It is associated with the society, ideals, tradition, customs and beliefs. So if a person is doing something contradictory to his superego, then it will lead to moral anxiety. Okay. So usually a person is continuously trying for finding the ways, facing the environment, challenges and anxiety experienced from that. But when he is incapable of reducing the anxiety by conscious efforts, he unconsciously tries to save the ego from getting hurt. And Freud calls it defense mechanism. So a person tries to fight against the anxiety and he tries to reduce his anxiety, but if he is not able to do so with his conscious efforts, then he unconsciously tries to save his ego, and this mechanism is known as defense mechanism. So there are several techniques of defense mechanism, that is projection, rationalism, aggression, etc. We studied all this in the previous videos. So the individual tries to indulge in one of the defense mechanism to save his ego. Okay. And usually many people are using different defense mechanism, but its excessive use can produce abnormal behavior. Though the individual uses defense mechanism, but if it is overused, then it will lead to abnormal behavior. So Freud's psychoanalytical model includes the concept of conscious, unconscious, repression, instinct, ID, ego, superego, stages of psychosexual development, anxiety and defense mechanism. So all these things are included in the Freud psychoanalytical model. Okay.